And we're live.
Skip,
Yo,
got a question for you.
hit me.
Are we gonna go 1-6 after that tape comes out of me sleeping with a Kardashian? Just a question. Just a question.
Shots fired.
That's actually hilarious. I could not believe that.
Which Kardashian?
Oh, I think I don't know who you would take. I think I
Oh, I'd
might.
say Kendall Jenner for sure.
I think I'd take Kylie.
All right.
Yeah, yeah. Well, okay. Well,
All right,
maybe we can shift
let's talk
to-
basketball. That's enough of that.
Yeah, and forget about the mother and Kim and all that. Anyway, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, wherever you are, whatever time it is for you right now. Just know that you are locked in until the point with
Skip.
and the king. You guys know what to do. Find us anywhere: Apple, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube, which is hopefully where you're watching us right now. If not, you're bootlegging and you owe us a couple bucks, and I'll come find you. I'll come find you, right? But go down there, click subscribe, click the bell, just so you can be notified anytime we post a video with our content and our great guests. Unfortunately, we don't have any of our great guests on tonight, right? But it's still me and Skip. So, Skip. Oh
geez.
man, I got something for you, man. I got something. Y'all clicked on the thumbnail, so you guys understand. Now, let's get this straight. In the last 10 games, ever since we'll preface it with from the Dallas Maverick game, the Toronto Raptors,
The last good game the Raptors played.
your Toronto Raptors are currently 4-6. They have fallen down in the standings. They're not that far off, ladies and gentlemen. But, Skip, the Raptors have taken a dive. Now, it's only 20 some odd games into the season out of 82. And if you count the playoffs, there's about 100, right? So it's not even, it's a fraction of what we can see. But do you think the Toronto Raptors organization, their front office, and the fans and the players should be in panic mode as of this current state of what is going on? Now, yes, President, please give us your State of Union.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely time to panic. I'm always the one who's like, stay the course, like they'll be fine, they'll bounce back. But you can't tell me you lose 2 games to the Magic. I know you were on the road, but the Magic were the worst team in the league going into that series. They're probably a little more talented than that.
3 wins.
They're probably a little more talented than that. They've won 4 in a row, but still, you can't go into Orlando and lose both games and consider yourself a serious team. Maybe you drop one because it's a road game, but you can't lose both. And then you come back to Toronto and you face a Sacramento team, which, yes, it's a little better than it's been the past few years. But first of all, they're on the road, you're at home. Second of all, they're on a back-to-back and you're not. So that's a game that you should absolutely...
After Philly, yes.
10 times out of 10, you should win that game, right? So that's a problem to lose that game. And we can get into the nitty-gritty details. Obviously, the three-point shooting is just not there. The three-point shooting has just completely abandoned this team. They were bad last year, and right now we're seeing a team that's regressed across the board. They've lost. They brought in Otto Porter Jr., but surprise, surprise, he's hurt. I mean, raise your hand if you saw that coming. But yeah, so you brought in the one guy you brought in to like augment the three-point shooting is hurt. Your 3 main three-point shooters in Gary Trent, Fred VanVleet, and OG Anunoby.
Hold on a second, Skip. We need to pull that up for the people out there to watch this. Give me a second here.
Uh-oh.
Hello, Lithuania? Yeah, can I speak to Arturas? Yo, Art, can you pull up that graphic, my man? Okay, cool. Yeah, I love you too. We'll talk soon. Okay, peace.
Yeah,
Pull that up.
So as I was saying, OG, Gary, and Freddie have all regressed from 3 this year. They're all below their career averages. And then you got Precious Achiuwa, who was sort of like the big breakout star from behind the arc. Last year, he really struggled early in the season, then he got hurt. So basically, all across the board, your 3-point shooting is down. And we've seen, especially in this last stretch, we're talking these 3 games against Orlando and Sacramento, and even a few games before that, it's Freddie who just has lost his shot. And even that game against Sacramento, he scored, I think it was 38 points, something close
39.
to 40. 39. Okay. So 38 points. He still only made 2 threes, if I'm not mistaken. So he was getting points. He was driving to the paint. But that shot has still not come back. And the Raptors absolutely need Freddie to be a shooter, to be the best version of themselves. So I think it's definitely time to...
Yes, we went 2 for 8 from 3-point line.
Yeah, so you got to raise the alarm bells, absolutely. I'm concerned. The next question is, like, what can we really do about this? So we just...
No, I got a question for you.
Okay.
Forget your question.
My
question for you, like, based on what they've done and based on what you've just said, I'm just throwing this out there. This is off script, ladies and gentlemen. Skip, you think the Raptors should be targeting a shooter in this league, considering now it is after December 15th and a lot of players are available for trade up until February? Do you think the Raptors should be looking for a shooter? And speaking of shooting, sorry, Skip, I'm going to take a time out here.
All right.
Speaking of shooting, y'all want to shoot your shot like your boy does, right? Look nice, look slick. Go to WeDoLaundry.ca. You guys punch in the promo code to the point for 5% off. They come to your door. They pick up your clothing. They wash. They fold. They bring it right back for you. We all know it's cold out here in the city of Toronto. It's definitely crazy out there right now in the dot. Look at Skip drinking his tea, right?
I'm sick too, but like I was walking outside in the sleet today. It was a lot, man.
Same here, dude. I got soaked. But so we understand that you might not want to go there, but they will do that for you. So do not forget, if you want to look as fresh as us and keep clear, get it? Go to WeDoLaundry.ca. Use the promo code to the point for 5% off, right? And they will take care of you just as much as you need. So, Skip, back to the question.
Well, absolutely. I think there's an argument for going out and getting a shooter, but I mean, you kind of have to look at the big picture here. The Raptors won 48 games or whatever it was last year with basically this roster.
Yes.
So you can sit back and you can say, okay, when everybody gets healthy, we're a pretty good team. At the same time, everyone else in the league is better this year. That's
what I was going to say. The whole Eastern Conference has stepped up.
That's just kind of how it works. Like year over year, you can't really roll back the same roster every year because other teams are evolving, they're changing, they're developing, they're getting better. So it doesn't always work. Now that's it. I think if everybody is healthy, this team is better than they've looked so far. The question is, okay, you go out and you get a shooter. What does that mean for you, right? Because I think there are trades out there where you can go and you can pick up somebody relatively cheap. Like, I don't know, maybe go out and get a Jay Crowder or get an Alec Burks, for example. No. Just kind of like a guy who can come in and fill a gap and expand your.
See, that's the question I want you to answer, Skip.
But these aren't
what gap needs to be filled, and don't mention her by name.
Well, I mean, just the shooting in general is a problem, and it's a question of, do you just need one more shooter? Is one more shooter going to change the whole dynamic of your team? Like, no, not really. What one more shooter could do is you bring in one guy, then you get Otto Porter Jr. back, then Freddie finds a shot again. Suddenly, maybe instead of being like the worst 3-point shooting team in the league, you're like average, or you're like 15, 16, something like that. So I think that's a Band-Aid solution, right? It's just you go out, you get somebody, a warm body,
temporary solution, yeah.
A guy who can come in off the bench. Maybe he's like a 5th starter, but that doesn't necessarily make this team a contender. That patches the holes for the rest of this year and helps them sort of move forward as a competitive team. But then you kind of have to look at the bigger picture, like, well, what if you want to make a bigger trade? Do you want to bring in an impact guy who's actually going to take you to that next level? Because right now you're a 10 seed, you can't shoot to save your life. Teams are on to the possession game that you're playing, right? I mean, they're still winning the turnover margins almost every night, but teams know how to exploit the things that the Raptors don't do well now, because that's in the scouting report. They know that the Raptors are going to try and force turnovers, so they're hitting the glass, for example. Just an example. Like there's ways that teams can sort of game plan for that, and I think they're a little bit more prepared for what the Raptors are doing.
Scouting reports, bro.
Yeah, scouting reports, obviously, and we've seen this with players, right? Sometimes it takes a year for the scouting report to fully get out on a player or fully get out on a team, and I think that's kind of what we're seeing a little bit this year.
Whoa! You just said it. Sorry, I'm going way off script here, Skip. But you just said that it takes about a year. Do you think that has any effect on how teams are treating Scottie Barnes this year, currently?
Well, that's an example of it, right? I think teams kind of know your strengths.
Is that a microcosm?
Well,
that's a microcosm.
That's what a sophomore slump is, right? It's like teams have adjusted to your strengths. Have you adjusted to your weaknesses yet? And that's why you can describe that with regard to Scottie Barnes. I mean, teams know that they can force him to become a shooter. They can do certain things to throw him off his game. Same with the team as a whole, right? There's ways that teams can say, like last night, Sacramento's like, we're just going to win the 3-point game. Like, it's ridiculous. You cannot expect to win a game in the NBA where you lose 3-pointers by 11, 33 points to the 3 alone. I mean, it's a miracle that was a 1-point game, because realistically, the only reason that the Raptors were in that game was because, first of all, they were forcing turnovers.
Points to the paint.
And second of all, they were getting to the paint at will. Sacramento showed no resistance for 3 quarters. And then in the 4th quarter, when they finally started clogging the paint, Toronto didn't have an answer, because it's like, we can't shoot threes. Like, we know we can't shoot threes. At this point, we're not even trying. And it's like, well, that's not going to work in the NBA. I'm sorry. When you have a hole that big, you might be able to squeak out a few wins against some bad teams, but there's no way you're a contender if you can't shoot threes in the modern NBA. So that brings me to my even bigger point, which I'm going to go off on the tangent here, which is...
Oh, here we go, ladies and gentlemen. Are you ready for Skip?
If we're looking at a team, if we're looking at kind of a repeat of the Tampa year, because keep in mind, the next couple of weeks are a pretty tough schedule.
What, the Mickey Mouse bullshit?
Well, fortunately, the Warriors game is coming up and they're missing Steph. But regardless, we're seeing a couple of tough teams coming up. We're already under 500. We're already on the fringes of the playoff race. Now, there's time to turn it around. There's plenty of time to turn it around. But if you see this start to spiral, right? If you see this, the water start to circle the drain a little bit, then you kind of have to sit back and think, hey, like, what about going the other way? What if we say Scottie is the future and we need to focus on Scottie as the franchise player and start looking at, what could we get for a Fred VanVleet? What could we get for a Pascal Siakam? Now, I don't think that trade is going to happen in the next month or two. I don't even really think it's going to happen at the deadline. Maybe in the offseason, you start to think about that. I'd be pretty surprised. But there might be an argument for, okay, let's reset the timeline a little bit. Let's take the burden off the books for the next 2 or 3 years. Let's maybe trade one piece. So let's say you trade Fred VanVleet. I mean, we've been talking all year about maybe you trade Gary, but Fred VanVleet's the older player. So if you want to build around Scottie, maybe there's a world where you move on from Fred.
Mom, don't worry. Mom, don't worry.
Just, and I'm just saying, take the call. I'm not saying pull the trigger on anything crazy. I'm saying don't hang up the phone if someone calls you. Don't hang up the phone. Here, a crazy one is Pascal Siakam. I don't think Pascal Siakam's going anywhere. But if a team picks up the phone and calls you and says, we think Pascal Siakam is the missing piece to take us to a championship, then you might say, all right, put your offer on the table. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying that you'd ever...
I want all your first rounders for the next 8 years.
I want a lot for Siakam. Don't get me wrong. I want a ton for Siakam. I want a boatload. But you're talking about two guys who are 27 years old in VanVleet and Siakam. And then Scotty and OG are just kind of a little bit younger, right? I mean, OG's more closer to the Siakam Van Vliet window than he is to the Scotty window. But if you're really thinking about how can we maximize Scotty Barnes as a developing prospect, as a player, maybe you really start to think about it. I'm not even saying do it, just you start to think about it.
Okay, Skip. Okay, Skip. I see where you're coming from. Like, yes, we're all aware. All of us that support the Raptors are very much aware that the future of the Raptors is Scotty Barnes.
Yeah.
No questions asked. Right? And we all know all good things come to an end at some point. So there might be that, yeah, that maybe there could be a point. I'm not saying now, but there will be a point where Freddie will leave, Pascal will leave, just like Kyle Lowry had to leave, Vince Carter. We've had some great players have to leave due to circumstance.
Sure.
So I get where you're coming from, that like, let's build around Scotty, but I'm not in that panic mode, bro. Honestly. You remember at the beginning of the season or preseason, I said what? The Raptors are gonna come in where?
Fourth, I think. No, did you say fifth or fourth?
Fourth. Last year I said fifth, and I was right. This year I said fourth, and they're not that far off. I think maybe like a little like maybe switching a player here and there, maybe utilizing the bench. If you were to make a trade, yeah, sure. Go get a shooter. You really don't need anything else. You don't need another big. Trust me, the Raps are full of bigs right now. Maybe not the big.
They're full of wings. They're not full of bigs. I think.
Have you stood beside one of those guys, bro? They're huge.
Well, they're big compared to me.
I'm sure you, but I'm telling you, they're huge. No, but still, I don't see a reason for the Raptors to be in panic mode and try to go off and pull the trigger on some crazy trade to get something like, well, maybe Y-esque, right? Like we've had before. But I really
I don't think that trade's
don't see a need for that. Well, yeah, Kawhi ain't coming back, but
but even the KD trade, I don't think that's on the table. I don't think there's a superstar that we could go out and get with our record being what it is right now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So there is no point. What I think is, I believe the coaching staff needs to utilize the players, and I think some players, I'm not going to say who, but some of them do really need to buy into the system. Because, Skip, we were talking the other night during the Sacramento game. We spoke during halftime, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And I mentioned to you that the Raptors were up by what, 13, 15 points?
Yeah.
And as soon as Freddie came back in, they end up down by 1.
This is in the second quarter, right? I believe.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because we spoke during halftime, so this was in the second quarter. So there are players that maybe the chemistry is not working. So I do see that needs to be addressed, but I think it could be done internally instead of externally. What do you think?
So that was actually a very good observation, because I did notice that as well. And I remember at that point, near the end of the second quarter or halfway through the second quarter, when Scotty checked out, he had been cooking. Like, he was cooking that game. He almost had a triple-double. So he was cooking. And you saw him sub out and you saw Freddie sub in, and you were like, I don't know about this. And the thing is, the stat line shows that Freddie had a great game, right? He had like 35, 40 points. He went off.
Anybody can look at a box score. Ask any LeBron fan.
But you noticed that the team wasn't really functioning at the same level when Fred was doing that, because it was all Freddie ball. It was all him taking on 5 defenders and getting to the rim. When Scotty was out there, you were seeing like cutting, passing, you were seeing all this stuff. And I thought late in that game, they kind of fell into that again, where there were just sections of the game where I mean, Pascal obviously struggled in the second half of that game, which is a big reason they lost. But there were sections of that game where it was kind of like Freddie, Pascal, and they were just kind of running two-man action. And I'm sitting there screaming at the TV like Gary Trent's wide open. Let Scotty Barnes run a play. Let's do something different because you guys are both covered.
Koloko.
Well, Koloko wasn't even in the game at this point. I'm talking like
Koloko was killing it in the first half.
Yeah, in the first half. I'm talking about later, like fourth quarter. But yeah, there were just sections of the game where I was like, okay, this Freddie Pascal thing, what the best thing you're going to get out of that is a contested layup or a contested three. Meanwhile, you should be looking for a Gary Trent. You should be looking for let Scotty take the ball, find a cutter. There were just sections of that game where it just felt like, and this is kind of the problem with the Raptors offense is there's no system, right? It's like you look at the starters and you say any one of those four guys could drop 30 on any night. OG, Pascal, Freddie, even Gary Trent Jr., even Scotty. I mean, maybe 20, but
so
yeah,
five.
Yeah, five guys who could on any given night drop 25 points. But what it ends up working out as is it's not they're not dropping 25 as a team, right? It's like, all right, I hope someone gets hot tonight, and then you ride the hot hand, which that's not a sustainable system because someone gets hot, someone else is cold. Someone gets hot, someone else is cold. Someone gets hot, the bench doesn't do its part. So it's not really working for whatever reason. And there needs to be some way of integrating all those moving pieces into much more of an optimal system. And the only way that I can see is for Scotty to do what he did last night. Even though it was a loss, triple-double Scotty is a thing that we need to be building around. That guy is a beast. And that guy gets in the paint. He knows how to score in the paint. He knows how to find shooters. He knows how to find cutters. He knows how to rebound. He knows how to defend. I mean, obviously the blow-bys are still a bit of a problem.
So slick, dude.
It's not even the no looks though. Like there were a couple times where he just found cutters, and he could have had at least a couple more assists in that game. Because I remember Kevin Birch blew a dunk or got fouled on a dunk or something. So there were a couple spots where he could have had even more assists. And the team was functioning well when he was doing that. And that's why the Pascal Freddie question is such a big one, because there is a vision of this team where Freddie, Pascal, and Scotty all mesh perfectly. But we just don't see it often enough. We see them taking turns, and that's not going to get it done.
Okay, so let me ask you, Skip. Let me preface this real quick. Scotty being evidently the future of this organization on the court. And Freddie kind of having that LeBron-esque where the ball is in his hands for most of the time on the shot clock. Do you think that
LeBron isn't the comp I use, but sure. I'm trying to think of one.
Dude, LeBron holds the ball for like 14 seconds on a shot clock and travels about 3 times every possession. But anyway, do you think that with that dynamic, now that it's going, do you think there is an issue? Because we did see something about somebody out there. I'm not even gonna source you, but somebody did say that Masai had a talk with Scotty.
Yeah, I saw that. I don't know. I think it was sourced to Grange. It was sourced to Grange, but I didn't see the original quote, so I don't really want to speak on it too much. Yeah.
Let's not talk about it. But do you think that dynamic inhibits the Raptors or prohibits it?
The Scotty Freddie thing? I mean, I think I've been trying to brush it aside for a couple of years, and I think it's hard to completely ignore at this point. Like I said, I think there's a world where it works. But as soon as things get sticky, as soon as something goes wrong, they go back into what Freddie used to do, what Freddie knows how to do. Freddie tries to be Lowry. Freddie tries to be the ball dominant guard. And I mean, it's one thing to say you buy into a system. It's another thing to buy into that system when things start to break down. That's really the problem here. It's not that I don't think it's that Freddie is sitting here being like, oh, I'm selfish. I'm going to be I want to be the scorer. I want to get 40 a night. It's like, okay, something's not working. In this case, Freddie's shot's broken. So Freddie, in the optimal system I'm describing, Freddie is spotting up and he's hitting his threes. Freddie stops hitting his threes. He's like, well, I got to do something. So he starts driving and he scores 40 points. Like he scores 35 points. That's great. But it takes away from what everyone else is
39.
doing. Yeah. So it takes away from what everyone else is doing. And then Pascal has a bad game on top of that. I mean, I don't want to hate on Freddie. I think Freddie did have a nice game, but the pieces are not clicking in a wheel. They're not all pulling in the same direction in the way that they need to. Now let me say one other thing though.
Well, go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, one other thing is like I think what we're seeing though is like as much as we can trash talk these 4 or 5 starters, the bench is really just.
We're not trash talking.
Yeah. Well, the problem is the holes that the Raptors have, right? They don't have the pieces to fill them internally. Nick Nurse can throw Koloko out there for defense, and then there's no offensive punch. He can throw Juancho and Hernangomez out there to try and hit some threes, but then there's a defensive hole. He can throw Malachi Flynn out there, but then like Malachi, all he's out there to do is try and hit his threes. So that's why I say I think the answers are not on the roster. I think eventually you have to go out and get better players.
So,
but this is
solution?
Sorry,
is that your solution to go get a better player to fill one of those holes?
I want to say it's more of. I want to say it's more of.
Now, no, wait, hold on. And what I mean by that, by solution, is: are you expecting championship level, or are you expecting better than average?
Yeah, I don't think there's a way for the Raptors to go out and get a championship level player this year. I think what they can do is if they want to compete, they can go out and then get 1 or 2 small pieces with, Kem Birch, Malachi Flynn, some picks. They can get some pieces that plug some more specific holes than the guys that they currently have on the roster. That said, what does that get you? That gets you maybe back to the 5th seed where you were last year. It gets you maybe the 4th seed, depending on how everyone else bounces back, depending on if Otto Porter Jr. plays and is healthy, depending on if Precious Achiuwa comes back and is Precious Achiuwa of last year instead of this year.
And if OG comes back next week.
But I have another comment, which is much more philosophical, which is you think about position.
Here we go, ladies and gentlemen.
You think about positionless basketball, right? The concept of positionless basketball. The concept of positionless basketball works if you have 5 wings who all have wing skill, guard skill, and big man skill.
Yeah.
So you're talking about 5 guys who have to, sure, they all play the same position, but they play all 5 positions, all 5 of them, right?
Yeah.
Now that works if the 5 guys are LeBron James, Kawhi Leonard, Kevin Durant.
Shut up, Stu. LeBron,
it's really
stop.
This is not a LeBron conversation. I'm just saying that works if you have 5 Hall of Fame wings, right? If you have 5 Hall of Fame players, then they're going to have all the skills that you need. Most players in this league do not have all 5 skills, or all 5 skills at all 5 positions, or all 5 skills at all 5 positions. Sorry. That's really rare to find. I mean, Pascal's getting there. You can see splashes of it in Scotty. You can see flashes of it in OG.
Scotty, definitely. He was the only player last year to start at all 5 positions.
Yeah, so you can see flashes of it, but in order to get to that elite level at all of these things, that's a huge ask. So when you're talking positionless ball, there are just going to be holes where you're going to have to go and you're going to have to get a traditional center. You're going to have to go out and get a traditional point guard. You're going to have to go out and get a traditional this, a traditional that, because it's only sustainable if you have a team full of all-time greats, which if you have a team full of all-time greats, like, you're going to win anyway. So
get to the point.
I'm just saying we might need to pivot away from positionless basketball and fill our freaking holes.
We have another giveaway coming up for our 750th subscriber. We got one. So you guys put your names in the running for it. We'll pick one at random. We will come and meet you. We will give it to you. For myself, Skip, all our fantastic guests, all of you that are there for us. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, good night, and
peace.